Hello YouTube, and welcome to the Body Honesty Project. My name is Lydia, and today we will be talking about confirmation bias. That is that thing that we do that validates our existing beliefs rather than accepting new information that might change our beliefs. It is a very, very common thing that all human beings do, but we should be aware of how we do it and try to mitigate it, at least a little. Now today I have a TikTok for you that goes through pretty much every single way you can do confirmation bias. But before we get into it, I think we need to learn a little bit more about confirmation bias. So why don't we watch this next clip, then come back and discuss. What is confirmation bias? Confirmation bias is seeking or processing information in a way that validates one's own beliefs. How is it done? There are many ways we can engage in confirmation bias, but categorically speaking, there are three main types: biased memories, biased interpretation, and biased search. A biased memory is when you recall an event from the past through a biased lens, reading more into the situation than what was actually there. When someone ruminates on a negative memory, their brain can even invent details that never transpired, and they become matter-of-fact in historical recollection. A biased interpretation is looking for the meaning you want in the information presented to you and ignoring what you don't agree with. Information you agree with is friendly, and information that you don't agree with is not only wrong, but a personal attack on you and your beliefs. A biased search is actively seeking information that validates your existing beliefs rather than neutral, unbiased information that will allow you to form beliefs. This is only looking for one type of information rather than considering all information. All three confirmation bias types can be done positively or negatively, meaning deliberately confirming that something is good or deliberately confirming that something is bad. So why do we do this? Our brains don't like the unknown. They prefer the comfort of their beliefs. We apply emotional filters to information contrary to what we believe to shield ourselves from pain, guilt, and accountability, even if the contrary information is true. Why is it damaging? By repeating and reinforcing beliefs, neural pathways get formed and strengthened. These are our brain's shortcuts, the place where we make quick decisions from rather than needing to gather more information. This can be damaging because when the basis for the beliefs is biased or incorrect, it impedes our ability to make logical decisions. Our brains want to be right, and in order to be right, we can either change our actions or change our beliefs, whichever one is easier. So, confirmation bias can be done three ways. We can confirm a historical memory with bias. We can interpret information either by reading it or hearing somebody else say it with bias. And we can search for information with bias. And this bias can be positive or negative, thinking that something is always good or thinking that something is always bad. So with all of that in mind, let's dive into Splotchmaker's TikTok and see what types of confirmation bias she employs.
Questions off of my story right now, and one of them was, when did you realize it's okay to be fat? So actually in 2018, I was on sort of like a weight loss kick trying to do that. And then as I got into 2019, the beginning of 2019, my body started changing. I started gaining a little bit of weight, and I was like really struggling with internalized fat phobia because my entire family has taught me from birth, just picked apart my body, said fat is horrible. But my body was changing, so I needed to dress it. I've only thought about the origins of how I unlearned it or the inciting moments a few times, but it really was just fat fashion and fat influencers who post fashion outfits or daily life content. I started watching Emma Thompson Hill in 2019 to kind of figure out clothing hauls and like where I could get clothes that fit my body now that I wasn't straight size. And I had never seen a fat person that was happy. Never. I didn't think that was a thing. Because at that point, my social media was just full of before and after weight loss pages and things like that. So, like, I was just really in this environment at home and online that was really fat phobic. I watched more of her videos, I followed her, and I followed other fat creators, and I had a moment to myself. I'm like, they look good when they're fat. They're not supposed to look good when they're fat, but they do. I realized it was okay to be fat when I saw other people okay with being fat. And not just being okay with it, but actively trying not to change it and living their life to the fullest. They had belly lines and big stomachs and big arms, and they didn't care. From there, I unfollowed all of the weight loss pages, and I just followed a whole bunch of fat creators, which then led me into following people into fat liberation, which then got me interested in fat liberation and fat positivity, true body positivity. And then I started following people that posted infographics, disproving all of these things I had thought that were fact, and I was presented with new information that I just hadn't had before because the world is fat phobic and doesn't want you to realize that you can be fat and be fine. So sometime in 2019, I realized it was okay to be fat because so many people were, and I had tried so hard, and it made me miserable. And I realized I had a choice between staying miserable in a body that was not going to change back to being thin. That thin ideal was gone after reading from so many scholars, my personal experience, everyone else's experiences. I realized I can live my life and be fat, or stall it and keep being miserable. I hope that answered everything.
Okay, so let's start with the first one, which is memory bias. Now, Splotchmaker starts off by recalling the stories from her past, from her family, always raising her to believe that fat was bad. And I'm not going to say that those incidents didn't happen, but when we ruminate on negative experiences, we tend to pick out all of the negative pieces and even invent other pieces that never transpired. It's very, very common. And furthermore, when she's looking back at these memories, she's negating any sort of positive messaging that may have existed at that time as well. Her memory is incredibly biased, focusing solely around being told that she was fat and bad, and forgetting all of the other great things that may have also transpired in her childhood. We can all be guilty of doing this type of behavior. I know personally that I have doubled down on a memory that I swore was true, and then when confronted with evidence that I remembered it wrong, I'm shocked. I'm appalled. I can't believe it, because I was so sure, because over time I recreated the memory in my head. I'll give you a silly one. This happened just a few months ago. I was watching Pretty Woman with my boyfriend, and we were about halfway through, and I had said something about, oh, my favorite part is when they play the Tarzan song. The Tarzan song is not in Pretty Woman, but I was damn sure it was in there. And when we watched the entire movie and the song wasn't played even once, I was like, huh? I saw this movie like 30 years ago. I know it very well. Of course the Tarzan song is in there. But no, it's not. It's not in the movie. The song I'm getting confused with is King of Wishful Thinking. It's not the Tarzan song. But for some reason, my memory had tricked me into believing that. And this is a silly example, but we do this with negative memories all the time. In fact, we'll invent a whole narrative around something. Someone might have been in a bad mood, been short with you, and then all of a sudden you start reading more into it, like they're deliberately being rude to you, that they are deliberately trying to be cold to you, that all of their actions are an attack on you. And then this becomes your memory and you ruminate on it over and over again. And then when you see the person, you assume that they don't like you, they hate you, or they're going out of their way to do things to you, when in actuality, they probably were just having a bad day and happened to be a little bit short with you at the time. The next way that Splotchmaker did confirmation bias was through interpretation, and she did it both positively and negatively. The positive way was when she was looking at other fat activists or other fat content creators and assuming that they are living their best possible lives, and assuming that being fat is healthy just by looking at those photos. She also did a negative interpretation bias by assuming that all of the people that posted anything about weight loss are harmful and dangerous and diet culture-y. And yes, some of them probably were, but were they all, or did she paint them all with the same brush? This is confirmation bias, showing that she's confirming the belief that any sort of weight loss is bad and assuming that that is the message that these people are trying to send. Interpretive confirmation bias is recognizing the information that you agree with and discarding all the information that you don't. And of course, the next thing that Splotchmaker did was the bias search, because as soon as she started to follow all of these fat activists, she was soaking up all of those infographics and misinformation that they all spread. She started to only look at those cherry-picked studies that show that obesity has no impact to your health. She chose to only look at the infographics that show how obesity is outside of your control and it's society's fault. She chose to only follow fat creators that speak this rubbish and isolate herself from anyone who says anything contrary. Now, the part of all of this that I find the most harmful is actually the part that she seems to have gotten right, which is this whole process of unlearning and why it's so dangerous. Now, let's think about it as a small child. A small child is learning about life, and let's say they discover stairs for the first time, and they've never seen stairs, and they're kind of curious about them, and then they take a tumble down the stairs. Well, then they just learned that those stairs over there, they're kind of scary. So the next time they go to the stairs, maybe they feel around them a little bit, and maybe they still take a tumble, but maybe it's not as bad. And through some trial and error and learning, they start to understand, oh, that the stairs are dangerous. So as they're learning, their brains are picking up on little bits of information and piecing them together. This is high, this is sharp, my depth perception is different, this is slippery, oh, this is dangerous. So it takes time before they can identify stairs, that's dangerous. That's how their brains mature. So let's take fat acceptance as an example. The people that are in fat acceptance are saying that they were raised to believe that being fat was bad. So over time, the pathways went from, okay, being overweight is unhealthy, overeating contributes to being overweight, so therefore I shouldn't overeat, and they make those connections. But when you continue to make those connections repeatedly, you no longer do all of the steps of, am I hungry? Have I had enough to eat? I've had too much. How many calories do I need? When you stop doing all those steps and you just leap straight to, I should not eat because food makes me fat, that is your brain taking a shortcut. Now, they want to unlearn this behavior. But the way to unlearn it is not to make a new shortcut, which is exactly what they're doing. So by doing confirmation bias, instead of taking all of the pieces of information, they're only taking the pieces of information that they agree with and drilling in this neural pathway of obesity is fine, restriction is bad, and doctors don't know anything, or whatever it is that they are repeating over and over in their minds. As they continue to do this, that neural pathway becomes stronger and stronger and stronger. So then your brain has a shortcut to not take all the information, but the second it sees diet culture, weight loss, bad, it's not making the right decision process to consider all the facts because it's already a belief. And the more that we do confirmation bias, the more ingrained those beliefs are. Think of beliefs that people hold, like religion. They are very, very, very ingrained, and people are very unlikely to want to challenge those beliefs. And the only way that you can change those beliefs is if you want to challenge them. And that's very, very difficult. We as humans do confirmation bias all the time. But it's a good idea that we check ourselves from time to time to make sure that we're actually considering all information and not just giving in to our internal beliefs because they're comfortable. So until next time, stay body positive, but also body honest.